you don't need to know how to code to create voice agents. We're not in that age anymore where you actually need to know how to code. I'd say even for like a one-man shop, a one-man army, it would be worth it implementing a voice AI solution that automates things for you. Simply imagine that you have a business that collected, let's say, thousands and thousands of leads over the last couple of years. It's humanly just not feasible to have a team literally just calling through them and following up with every single one. We had campaigns for Fortune 200 companies where we called 20,000 people in like a month. That would have taken a human multiple years to fulfill, right? And these things have not been possible before. But generally, the AI has no connections to anything. Now, you got to connect it to something, right? And that usually happens through workflow automation tools. And NA10 is just happened to has a lot of more really cool functionality, especially if it comes to custom code that we really, really like. It's more like a set of solutions that work extremely well. And that's 4 in total. That's lead reactivation, appointment setting, customer support, and lead qualification. These 4 solutions work mostly throughout any kind of industry. And we really have proven that to ourselves because we had companies from like small businesses to Fortune 200 companies that we served with these solutions. Simply imagine you own an e-com store, you sell a 1,000 different kind of products. Having an employee trained on knowing all of those products and what to do with them is incredibly hard.
Hey, Jannis, welcome to the podcast, brother. So glad that you're here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
100%, man. Love your channel. Love what you're doing. You have a really technical backend, and you really focus in on voice AI and integrating into NA10. Can you talk to me just a little bit about like the benefits of connecting a voice AI platform to the backend of NA10?
Yeah, I mean, there's a gazillion of things that pop in my head, and I'd say probably from like more sophisticated solutions towards implementing anything that makes the voice agent talk to external services is usually orchestrated through NA10, right? So if we talk about voice AI itself, voice AI is basically just that orchestration layer. You have platforms like Vapi, Lemon Labs, Retail. They allow you to have these voice conversations with the AI, but generally the AI has no connections to anything. Now, you've got to connect it to something, right? And that usually happens through workflow automation tools. And NA10 is just happened to has a lot of more really cool functionality, especially if it comes to custom code that we really, really like. And that allows us just to build really, really sophisticated solutions towards helping NA10 connect our voice agent to external services, stuff like QuickBooks, Facebook, whatever that might be, right? And that is one of the major use cases. But recently, since AI, obviously, we're going deeper into MCP, which works incredibly well with NA10 too. And I think that is something that we are trying to leverage even more, especially now since you have that SSE integration. So you can stream data back and forth, which was the only bottleneck that we had to make the data interaction quick enough so that you can actually talk with MCP server in voice AI. And that has been, I would say, the biggest USP for now, at least if it comes to MCP.
Yeah, because with voice AI, you don't want that big lag effect, and you don't want to have to wait until you get the entire data set of voice being sent over. So being able to stream that, you can kind of get more real-time conversations back and forth. It makes it sounds more human. Is that accurate?
Yeah, the thing is basically when you spin up an MCP server, that usually you had to have this middle solution, this middleman. And whenever you send a request there, it would need to spin up this MCP server. It would initialize all the services, then provide the tools, then make this one tool call and shut it down. This whole process takes anywhere from 5 seconds up to like a minute, depending on how quick the system is. And you can imagine if you're on the phone and you need some quick data, waiting a minute for an answer, it's just not a thing, right? So that is where this thing changes. And now we get responses in like less than a minute, less than a second, which is really good.
Amazing. Can you talk to me about, I want to first talk about like the use cases. So you've been really deep in the voice agent section of things. What are some of like the big industries or the big use cases of voice agents for businesses?
It's a very interesting one. I wouldn't even say there is a specific industry that stands out. It's more like a set of solutions that work extremely well. And that's 4 in total. That's lead reactivation, appointment setting, customer support, and lead qualification. These 4 solutions work mostly throughout any kind of industry. And we really have proven that to ourselves because we had companies from like small businesses to Fortune 200 companies that we served with these solutions. So they have been incredibly powerful.
When you say that, could you say that again? Lead force solutions? Is that what you're saying?
For lead qualification, you mean the type of solutions?
Oh, you said lead qualifications.
Lead qualifications, yeah.
Got it. Okay, so lead qualification. So they're calling up. So real estate. You want to make sure that they apply for things, and so you're looking to get all the data extracted for real estate is a popular one for lead qualification to know. Should I pass this? Should I even pass this on to a human, or is this someone that we don't even want to direct towards this? Maybe sending them some educational content. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. You have Facebook lead forms, right? They fill out a form. You just call them with voice AI right after. Speed to lead is super important. That's why it works so well. You just qualify them. You ask them a couple of questions. They can either book an appointment straight on the call, or you just drop them or send them an email, whatever it is. and then just have them book there. But yeah, that's one of the big things that works super well.
What were the other ones? And I just want to go down them one by one. You said there's
Sure.
4 of them.
Lead reactivation. It's
Lead
one of our favorite
reactivation.
ones. Yeah. Simply imagine that you have a business that collected, let's say, thousands and thousands of leads over the last couple of years. It's humanly just not feasible to have a team literally just calling through them and following up with every single one. So we have voice AI, and we can literally just bulk call them and qualify them, because in some way they obviously they need to be validated and you need to have permission to call them. So there's a lot of legal work around that. But when you have that, it's incredibly beneficial. We have campaigns for Fortune 200 companies where we call 20,000 people in like a month. That would have taken a human multiple years to fulfill, right? And these things have not been possible before.
Yeah. So lead qualification, reactivation, I should say. I'm curious on that one because there's a piece of this. Yes, you can do volume, but I know as someone who's hyper focused on value added activities, besides just calling them up and getting the data, is there any way with that lead reactivation that you've seen of use cases to, besides just extracting to reactivate them? Is there any value added activities you're doing with that voice call?
You mean specifically regarding lead reactivation?
Yeah, I know for the company itself, say the Fortune 2000 companies, right? It reactivating is highly valuable for that Fortune 200 company, right? So they're reactivating the leads, but for the lead itself, is there anything like, hey man, I don't know, it's your birthday, or we found these really cool things, or is there something that you're doing in order to reactivate that lead to add value to that lead's life?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, there's always a reason why we call them, right? So we did that, for example, in the recruitment space. Recruitment, you can imagine, people are often looking for new jobs if you can call them and you can match that position of what they previously tried to apply for. You have that information, right? We can enrich the voice AI literally just focusing around that and can request more information about their current status, how much they want to earn, etc. So this is how we can really tailor those calls specifically towards people. And that's obviously just one call, right? Then you have things like what happens if the person doesn't pick up and calls back? What happens if you implement like a call cadence, so you call them multiple times over a set of days? There's tons of extras and extra utility you can build on top of that. So it's usually not just a one-time call. It's usually like a whole system around that just to make sure you get a higher output and success rate.
Yeah. So what you're saying there is like, for obviously if someone's looking to get a job, then you're like, hey, you have these certain set of skill sets. Let's say product designer. By the way, if you're looking for a job, we have 3 positions that maybe pay this range or something be very valuable. Is that something to be interested in? And then it's a double-sided value market because the recruitment space gets a high quality lead for them. They can get employment, and then you're pairing them up with something that they want to have.
Yeah, correct.
Love it. Okay, what was the third thing?
Customer support.
Customer support.
Right?
Yeah.
Simply imagine you own an e-com store. You sell 1,000 different kind of products. Having an employee trained on knowing all of those products and what to do with them is incredibly hard. So with voice AI, you can nowadays just take all of those products, you basically clean, that's how we call it, you clean that information, you feed it into the voice AI agent, and it knows everything about every single product. Then you have a person just calling in and saying, hey, look, my item is broken, it's XYZ, can I please have a replacement? And the voice AI can say, oh yeah, no worries at all. What is your order ID, for example? You say the order ID, it can literally schedule the placement for you or offer you a refund. So that's stuff that works incredibly well and throughout all kinds of industries.
Yeah. And I can see that being valuable, especially for if you have a large data set of knowledge, because a lot of these customer service agencies, they're mostly following, it's usually some sort of possibly offshore customer service support person, and they're just running through an SOP. Tell me what your issue is. They look it up in the SOP. They say, okay, this widget broke here, then try X, Y, and Z steps. Did you try X step? Move on to the next phase of solutions. Yeah. And so it sounds like you're probably feeding in the manual of whatever that SOP is for customer support and then training the agent on it so that it can follow the same type of steps, correct?
Yeah, pretty much. It's like, I can go pretty deep in this, but to make it on a basic level, simply imagine like I would not consider myself like a technical engineer if it comes to building voice agents. We are more of conversational artists, which kind of goes together with what you just said. So we are actually prompt engineering more of the time than we do actually the tech stuff behind it. So if it comes to SOPs, yes, in some way we feed in the SOPs. On the other hand, it's making sure that it has some sort of guideline that would kind of match the pattern of the SOPs that they have for certain products. That makes sense. So you basically try to merge everything into one conversation that kind of like helps the AI to understand what to do in certain scenarios.
Yeah. And it's really interesting because I think part of these things is when people with AI agencies, right, they think they need to know technical skills, it's an important piece of it, but there's an artistry to this. There's a certain art behind, say, prompt engineering. There's a art behind, say, lead getting. If you're writing cold email copies, there's an art behind the technical science of things. Can you talk to me about a bit of the art of prompt engineering? Like, what are some of the elements or structures or styles or patterns that you try to do to make a really good prompt for these types of voice AIs?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. But before that, there's one more thing I want to mention. Yeah. You don't need to know how to code to create voice agents. Right? We're not in that age anymore where you actually need to know how to code. If you use N8N and you know how to use ChatGPT, you can most likely build whatever you want, literally just without any kind of technical knowledge. It's just such a powerful weapon. So I just see that all the time. People are afraid of going into building these agents because they think they need to code. They don't, like, not at all.
Yeah, I know. Like back in the day when you'd go to like a coding boot camp, the first thing they do is they teach you how to Google. All right, what's your Google foo? Can you Google the problem first instead of trying to solve it? And I feel like we've shifted away from Google foo to ChatGPT foo. Right? Your ability to be able to interact with the AI and know the different methodologies to be able to work with an AI to solve coding problems.
Yeah, exactly. It all comes again down to prompt engineering, right? How to actually say something proper so AI gets the best value out of it.
Yeah.
And there's tons of techniques around that. I mean, one of the biggest ones that we've seen is at least with voice AI, which has been around with OpenAI since the beginning. It's called Markdown. Does it ring a bell? Do you know about that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Let me just break it down a bit easier, because initially it was some sort of formatting, a text-based formatting language that helps us to format text visually so that it's easier to read for humans. So imagine if you add 2 hashtags in front of a single line. It would be considered an H2 title, right? So if you're in a Google Doc and you try to select a title, you can select from H1, H2, H3. 2 hashtags would basically be the equivalent to these H2 titles. And it's just written in text. So it would be literally just hashtag, space, and then the wording, which would then be rendered by some external service wherever you upload those Markdown files so that it's visual and you can see it with more patterns. And that is amazing because it not only allows us to actually see things with certain priority, but also AI. Obviously, if you go on a website, the first thing you read is usually the title. That's the thing that is most relevant. So you know it has a higher meaning. Now, if you imagine that you have this H1 title, so 1 hashtag in the word, you see this thing first, so it has a higher meaning. And the AI can interpret that same way, even though it's not visual, but AI just literally sees the hashtag. But it knows that this thing that comes after that until the next line break is a lot more valuable. So when prompting things, you can literally use this Markdown to incentivize the AI to value certain things better or more to get a better outcome. So that is one of the good ways on how you can structure things in blocks. So basically like paragraphs and titles. Make sure you give it like guidelines and instructions and constraints, all properly formatted in blocks, that AI has a better understanding of what you actually want from it and a better guideline with less hallucinations, because hallucinations are always the worst and probably one of the biggest things that we see people struggling with when building any kind of AI solution.
2 points to that. But one thing is, actually I had this, I was running an N8N meetup in LA 2 days ago. And they were asking about the value of sending in, using JSON to send that in as the system prompt. And they're asking, is that more valuable than sending in text? But it seems like my personal belief around that is if you want to have an output that's structured, using a JSON, like a structured output parser, that to have structured output is good. But do you think there's any benefits of sending in JSON as the system prompt in order to understand that to prompt the system better? Or simply will the Markdown be sufficient enough?
I think there's some edge cases where a JSON would potentially be better. To be fair, it's probably that edge case that I can't even think of one like out of the box. I would probably say just Markdown is better. If you want responses in JSON, that's a different thing. You can have a Markdown section that contains a JSON example, like a response example on how you'd like to have the answer back. That makes sense. Or where it also makes sense to have JSON, but again, it's just part of this whole Markdown prompt, is when you have certain structured data that you want the AI to understand better. So if you, for example, have a tool call, so you have functionality within this AI agent that retrieves information from somewhere else. Let's say your AI agent can retrieve information from QuickBooks about an order. And when it retrieves that information, you can put that back in as JSON because it just helps the AI to understand, okay, this is actually information that comes from somewhere else. And it knows better how to leverage that. But again, it would just be like a subpart of this whole Markdown prompt.
Got it. Yeah. So it's essentially saying, hey, if you need to call a tool in your tool belt for the AI agent. You can feed in a certain data set and say, this is kind of how you can call that tool. And this is to understand better how to call the tool to get the data back, say from QuickBooks or from any of the other tools that you're calling.
Yeah. So I would see JSON only as a part of a Markdown prompt rather than as a prompt itself.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. And so, question about the customer service bit. So, high level, massive volume, being able to train the AI to answer SOPs, or maybe there's some sort of training materials. That makes a ton of sense. I see another use case, and tell me at what point is this valuable? There's many businesses out there, small businesses, mechanic shops, or other places that can't always answer the phone calls, but they might be missing out on responding to leads that maybe look them up in Google Maps and give them a call and they don't get them there, right? Have you seen value for those sizes of businesses? Maybe it's a 1 to 5 person shop or something. At what point does it make sense to bring in an AI agent to help answer customer service calls when the attendant or the person isn't there to answer the call?
A very, very good question. And I would probably see this from 2 different angles. The first angle is obviously the lucrativity of voice AI itself and the way of tracking the data and making sure you spend less time on it. I'd say even for like a one-man shop, a one-man army, it would be worth it implementing a voice AI solution that automates things for you. So, and even we had this many times that we had some after-hour calls, right? Or after-hour call solutions where the shop, for example, implemented the voice caller afterwards. So whenever the shop was closed, they just route that call over to the voice AI agent and they just qualify it, see if it's something important, and then either route them somewhere or just note it in a database, right? Again, simple connection with NNN into an Airtable, and that's done. That is pretty valuable. The question, and that is what usually holds people back, is the other side, which is the price. Usually, it costs quite a bit of money for someone to implement that. And that might be the bottleneck that keeps people from really going for it, especially because that whole technology is still so new that most people don't really understand how it works and the value of it. So that's kind of like where we come in. I mean, this whole market is out there since maybe a bit more than 1.5 years, that it's like an actual feasible thing that makes a lot of sense to implement. And it's still very new. So people, they're often not even solution aware. So getting over this gap and then charging them anything from like 500 to 10,000 for a basic solution is very hard to reason if they don't really understand the concept. So that's probably one of the biggest bottlenecks of making them aware and showing them that it actually brings that value, right? And this is kind of the other side where I think we have a lot of people that don't really go for it, at least right now.
Yeah, and so diving into that, because I think that is a key piece. I think there's 2 probably blanks or 2 bottlenecks that people might face. One, will this have a negative impact on the view of my business, as if someone's using voice AI? And the other one is, will I actually generate revenue from it? I think speed to lead is really important. But I want to touch on this, you call it lucrativity or ROI with these companies. How do you show with data that this thing is delivering an ROI? What does that look like for you?
There's a couple of different angles to it. And interesting enough, it's not always money. There's a lot of other aspects involved that make a lot of sense. An interesting one is, for example, the health and the recreational space or happiness of employees. Let's, for example, say, and this might be a bit further out, but we, for example, had some let's say dentist offices, right? They have always a front desk. The front desk takes all of the calls. And that front desk can be fairly easily replaced. However, replacing it is usually not a way how we market that, because even though a lot of people do that, they don't understand why, because they don't have the data. The fact is that most people, especially those local companies that have like one dentist office, they love their employees. They don't want to get rid of them. They have like a personal connection. They feel like family. So rather than talking about replacing them, it's more like enhancing their functionality and possibilities of just leveraging their time better and helping work on more high leverage tasks, right? And where this becomes very interesting is because if you're on the front desk and you need to take calls, you never know who you deal with. Someone might be in a bad mood. They get screamed at, they have really bad interactions, and that really pulls them down. So telling a business owner that you can actually help their employees be a happy version of themselves, which not just gives them time back, but probably also better resources and more flexibility on working on high leverage tasks. This is a massive game changer. It helps them in so many ways. And the business owner is happy because they know they also don't need to replace them. They know they can leverage them in a better way. They solve phone problems. So all of that is one of the unique selling points. And these specific connections, they're often even priceless, what we've seen, right? So they don't even put a price to that. If they can make someone happier, especially like in a very tight environment, great. So that is one of the aspects. And then obviously we have the time saving and we have the human error reduction, which is another one. All of them kind of contribute towards the same thing. And these are like the basic values, right? You can even calculate that up if you have enough data. How much money do you save them? How much is a reactivated lead worth it? How much more money, or how easier does the company scale now with having more resources available rather than having people on the phone? All of those things would fall into that. So it's surprising, but we had a lot of cost companies where we brought them at least like $500,000 worth of more value, right? From like a simple phone interaction.
Yeah. And I didn't think about the mental space of health and happiness for the customer services people, because I noticed, like, a long time ago I was in the customer service space, and I recognized that some of the most unhappiest people were customer service people, because they constantly had their cup be drained of happiness. Yep. Because they're constantly facilitating these really unhappy people. And so I could see how, if there was a chance to basically offload some of that capacity, which says, okay, you don't have to focus on these people out the gate. You can maybe focus on the higher leverage activities, whatever those things might be. You could then say, okay, you're not being spread too thin, which then, lowers the overall, happiness meter of the company. That's a really cool one for like I would say kind of like a second tiered value. Like there's primary value and there's second tier value. Primary is profitability and all that stuff. And the other one is kind of like psychological safety in an organization, overall health, wealth, happiness, feeling like you're heard, you're understood, and then, nice little value bombs of, wishing someone a happy birthday or whatever it might be. So I like that as the secondary. The thing
it's actually sometimes even a primary one, by the way, like depending on the company size. The smaller companies, for them, the secondary part, like you mentioned, is usually even the primary one, because they don't often want to grow. They just want to have more time. They want to have more freedom. And that's something you can enable that. So it really depends on the kind of target group, which is, I just want to emphasize that because this whole thing is so new. No one really understands it. So getting the data out there is one of the most relevant things at all.
Yeah, with businesses, I've noticed this. There's two sides to this, right? Like, so the first half, it comes down, I wish I had more leads. And then the second half is, I wish I had more time, right? And it's usually the one or the other. And then if you get all these inbound leads, then you have to filter through the unqualified leads, or you got to reactivate the leads, or whatever it might be. And then you translate that to, great, we got all this inflow. Now, how do we make it free up more time with these people coming in? So if you can parse them out using a voice agent, I could see how that could add to more time, more happiness, and then ultimately more money, because then you can focus on those higher leverage activities versus answering phones all day or doing redundant activities like going through, technical
and less
issues.
Human error. It's a very big one too, right?
Less human error as well. Yeah. And in terms of training the AI, one of the things that, I don't know if have you used the AI evaluation system for N8N yet?
Partially, yeah. Yeah. We have different methods for that, but yeah.
Cool. Well, because that's one of the questions is, a lot of people want to use AI agents to do things. And since it generates, sometimes when it generates, it doesn't always do the output that you want. And so there's that, when you talked about the confidence of, is this thing answering in the way I want it to be able to answer? We have the AI evaluation system where you can kind of give it the data set of the evaluations, and then the back half, you can then measure that in terms of an output with the evaluation testing and the metrics, right? Whether you use that system or another system, how do you have confidence that you're training the AI to have the output that you want with these voice calls?
It's usually always a work in progress. Like, even if we talk about, like, what we usually serve is handover solutions. So we basically build out the whole system on the client's tech stack, and they kind of own everything after. And they usually expect this to be still a one-time thing, which it kind of is. The thing is, or the reality is, that you need to always work on voice agents on an ongoing basis, because there's always a way on improving quality and getting a better throughput. So for us, this whole testing thing is often something that is ongoing, and we usually even split it into two things. We have, on the one hand, the maintenance, and on the other hand, the monitoring. Both are automated, and both are using some sort of voice AI testing tools. And obviously, like in your sense with N8N, one really cool way that we've been using is hooking up N8N with, let's say, Supabase or Airtable. We use both for that, to basically just visualize the data that we get out of those phone calls. So there's usually, after a phone call, you get an end of call report that contains a lot of information with relevant details about the call, how it went, the success valuation, maybe some extracted values. And in Airtable, we can just bridge that fairly easy with Superbase, just feed in all of the values, visualize it in an interface, and then we can see, okay, in month January, we got X amount of people, and so many people booked an appointment. So you get actually insights, and these insights, again, you just leverage to understand how well it currently works. And usually there's some rule of thumb. If you build a voice agent and you release it, it's usually around 80 to 85% accuracy. And the more you progress, getting to the last 10% is incredibly hard, and the last 5% is super, super duper hard. And even then, you never get to 100%. It's just impossible, the way how AI is designed, and that you can always just extend it. But the higher you go, the more sophisticated it becomes, and the harder it becomes as well to adjust things. So these kind of tracking solutions, they are really, really good of getting these first 10 to 15% really well.
Yeah, I'm curious with that too, because you're talking about, taking these, it's optics, really. It's taking these unseen conversations that most people, say higher level people in the organization, don't have access to. Yep. Pulling that out in this conversation and then dropping that into a database so that you can review that to see, okay, what are the edge cases? What are the questions that the AI wasn't ready for? Or what are most of the times with SOPs and things like that, they're not fully fleshed out. They're good, but then you have the human intuition that is usually bridging that last, 20% that are these edge cases that just humans might know how to handle that aren't in the SOP. I'm curious with getting that reporting from the phone call into the database and then delivered to leadership, whatever that leadership might be. How do you deliver that? Do you deliver like a report as like an email, or do you have a front end for Airtable, or do you call them with a voice agent and give them a daily report? What does that reporting to leadership look like?
Yeah, let's go with the Airtable example because it's easy to understand. Airtable has something called interfaces, which allows you to just create a visual dashboard by hooking up the data of whatever is in the Airtable database. Right, so we can actually just give the client access to the Airtable database, or either they have their own account and they just see those visual interfaces, they can interact with it and can maybe leave comments and other things, right? So that is one of the things. Or you can even just externally generate a report within an NLN flow, for example, and just send that out via an email. So these are the two ways. However, the interfaces are usually the more relevant ways for people because they like to see things visually.
Yeah. It's about what's a good way to process the data. And so so especially because any business owner anywhere, they don't have a lot of time. So can I glance at something and see what it is? And so like the Airtable visual interface is nice because then you can probably graph things, put things inside of there. You create a dashboard and they can just at a glance see who's performing. When I say who, it's like the AI agent. Which one of these AI agents are performing well? What's the data coming back? What are we getting? Have you seen anything with, I don't know if you do this at all. I was just thinking about it with reporting on like sales phone call conversations. Is there anything that you do with that? I know you do a lot of voice agents, but I know voice agents for lead qualifications, then that usually gets passed off to some sort of either setter or closer that then close the deals. Is there anything that you've been able to use like in terms of like human to human voice conversations or anything around sales that you're pulling out the data from those conversations to be able to convert those sales to higher performance?
Yeah, we did, I think, like one solution where we specifically trained AI on the existing transcripts. So we basically analyzed the transcripts and created a solution around that just helps their own staff to be trained on, right? So you would basically simulate a customer with AI, and that customer is just talking to the actual sales rep, and you just see how well they actually perform based on certain questions. So you can have certain scenarios built into those prompts to make them dynamic. And that's, for example, say one is a little bit more picky, the other one doesn't really want to buy or doesn't have the funds. You can just see how the sales rep interacts with it. And at the end, you do an analysis just like you do for a customer to push that again into a database and then analyze the performance of those sales agents. So that's something we did before.
That's awesome. Yeah, because now you're using basically two sides of the AI agent. One is customer facing, one is employee facing.
Yeah.
The customer facing answers the questions. The employee facing trains the customer on best practices that you can then do a report, whether it's going up to a sales director or the owner of the company to go, how is this person overcoming objections? How are they answering needs and concerns? How are they, adding value to the conversation or booking the next meeting? I like that. And so then that would also be visualized in some sort of dashboard like Airtable?
Yeah.
Cool.
It depends usually on how big and sophisticated it is. Airtable has a few limitations if it comes to massive amounts of data. So anything where we have more than 50,000 calls, it's usually something that we don't put into Airtable.
Got it. At 50,000 calls, where would you put it? Superbase or?
Yeah, Supabase, or sometimes even just a MySQL on their own AWS infrastructure. So it's some more custom stuff, because especially with the bigger ones, we have a lot of more regulatory compliance to follow. So they usually have all of that in their own little infrastructure environment.
Yeah. AWS is a very big place for enterprise users to dump data into. Great to put data in, a little expensive to pull data out. So as data, if anybody doesn't know that, AWS is really low cost, and it's really easy to get up and in there, but they kind of have a walled garden that if you want to extract and like get all your data out of it, they charge a lot of money to do that. So it's very convenient to get in, but if you want to switch, can be a little painful. Love it. Now we talked about 3 of the 4 use cases. Can we go back to the 4th use case, right? We talked about lead qualification, lead reactivation, customer service, and then what was the 4th one?
Appointment setting. So that kind of goes together with lead qualification, but can be a separate solution too.
How do you handle appointment settings, especially across different time zones? I know sometimes that can be a little tricky.
Yeah, that's only one of those 500,000 issues that can appear with appointment setting.
Okay. Give me the top 3.
One of my favorite examples was one of the I'd say bigger dental companies in the US. They had more than 1,000 offices. And it's not just that you have an office with doctors, you have multiple offices that have doctors that rotate in between them, right? You have a Dr. A in office B on Tuesday, and then the next week in office C for like only half day. And all of that is basically just managed in a very random and not even defined way in their CRM system that they are using. And connecting all of that, and this even like without any kind of time zone switches, can be very difficult. And it's always, there's not like a one solution that suits everything. It's always a trial and error that meets the exact criteria of what that specific client needs. So time zones, to be honest, is often something that we've discussed, and some people want it, but the people that really want it are either really big companies, or they just want it because they have no idea why they want it in the first place. It's literally just these 2 cases. But yeah, it's very individual, and the outcomes vary tremendously. If you have something with rotations, like in that case, you can't, for example, just book slots during a call, because it would take way too long, because you have such a line of things that you need to check and make sure it works. So with these CRM systems, you can freeze slots, which means you just block it. And then at the end of the call, you do extra analysis to go through and see, this person actually wanted to book here. Let's just really book them in. And then you walk through this whole process, extract all the things you need, and then book them in. So there's tons of logic that goes into that. And yeah, as much as I'd like to have like a predefined solution, there isn't one.
Yeah, I'm very familiar. I've had to build these systems out. So I know in terms of the booking can be complicated, especially if you have like a non-local company, right? And they do work all around the world, and they want you to do a round robin with the different, closers, and each person's calling in from different places around the world, and you need to do a round robin system. The part of the thing, I think the challenges I see is around, you need to be able to, one, say, okay, what kind of tech stack are you using? Google Calendar? Are you using Go High Level? Are you using Calendly? And then can you, that's the one piece, the tech stack. And then can you get people to actually have their availability and use the calendar consistently, so that if you're actually booking the right people, you actually are pulling the right data sets. And so you have a thing in place where you're setting the meeting, but you're not confirming the meeting unless everything crosses and checks after the call. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a lot of money work. And especially with the calendars, it can be very tricky too. We had people with Microsoft calendars. You can imagine you got to authenticate a lot of stuff just to make this work. And same with bookings. Calendly, for example, for a long time, they have an API, but they didn't really have an API for booking appointments for whatever reason. And we had it often that customer came in with a round robin structure of different sales agents on Calendly. There's just no way for us to use it because we couldn't book appointments, right? We can get the availability setter, but it doesn't help us if we can't book it. So you got to find really creative workarounds about solutions that seem to have an API, but then you can't integrate them. It's really weird. And all of these kind of little nuances, they make a project go from 2 weeks to 2 months, pretty much.
Yeah, it's those edge cases. If you can come in and say, okay, we're going to use this tech stack with these things, and this is what we're doing, then it's great. It's just that friction between trying to integrate what the company's already doing and then what the actual what the employees are actually doing, and trying to get them to integrate with stable structures, I would say, and technologies. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a hard one. It's high value, but also high complexity. So if you looked at those things versus like customer service is probably high value, less complexity, which is probably an easier task to take on.
Yeah, true. It just depends then again on how easy it is for other people to jump on as well, right? You have more competition in one that is easier to fulfill, but it usually yields a lot better results to go for something more complex.
Do you do anything with human in the loops, like where the voice agent can't handle it and then a human jumps in and helps take things over?
All the time.
Yeah.
It's some very, very common thing. I mean, obviously, people might lose business if some stuff doesn't work. So in the majority of cases, especially with bigger companies, we always have fallbacks where we route certain cases or edge cases or emergencies to a predefined hotline.
Yeah. So I was going to say, how do you then connect people from I'm on the phone with the voice agent, things aren't working well for whatever reason, you hit the panic button for a human in the loop. How do you end up routing them do you tell the agent to tell them to call this number? Is there some way to have them hop in on that phone call? How does that work?
Depends a bit on the infrastructure that you use and what kind of service you build the voice agents on. But generally, it's prompt engineering. You just try to define rules for how to handle edge cases. Or let's, for example, say the customer repeats or the AI doesn't really understand their insurance ID or whatever it is. And it can't figure it out for 3 times. Then you basically just build in a mechanism that routes them to a certain place when they, for example, don't hit it in 3 times. And that's usually a call transfer. So again, depending on where you have your phone number hosted, there are different methods for it. But generally, what we do nowadays a lot is warm transfers. Initially, we did call transfers, basically meaning that whoever we call with or whoever we transfer it to, that person doesn't really know what happened on the other side. Now we have warm transfers. So now, while the user is on the phone call, we actually transfer it. The other person picks up and the AI summarizes what happened in the current conversation. So the person already knows something about it. And then we transfer. Right? That's kind of the difference. And that's what we use most of the time.
Love it. That's a great use case because one of the things is someone picks up the phone, they have no context around the conversation, much like an unprompted AI agent. You have what's going on. But say, hey, this is Bob. Here's what he's trying to do. Here's what he's struggling with. And if you could help him do this, this would be great. And then you bring them in and they go, hey, Bob, nice to meet you. I see you're struggling with this. Let's help you get across the finish line. And then that way, it feels like there's been it's not like the most frustrating thing in any business with these things is when you get transferred, like you're calling a credit card company or something, you get passed from one company, one service to another service to another service. And you got to keep giving them your card number. You got to keep giving them your pen. You got to keep giving them the same. Like, man, I already gave you all this stuff. I have to do this one more time. I'm going to be so upset. So the warm transfer, I think, is a really understated value add that you can do to keep the customer happy and engaged as you shift them from AI to human. I love it.
Yeah, exactly. It's those small little things that you add on top of it that people usually don't think of when they build a voice agent. But this is exactly these few percent that make a difference.
100%. Now, shifting out into basically, I'll say tech stacks, but overall structure, right? What are the common? So we talked about this, like say VAPI, N8N, Airtable, right? What are the different elements that you need in order to set up these voice agent infrastructures?
It can get really complex, but I'd say, especially if we talk about beginner things, the best possible setup you can have as a beginner for building voice AI agents is N8N, VAPI, and Airtable. These 3 literally can get you mostly anywhere, at least in the beginning, to build out voice agents. If you have more sophisticated needs for custom infrastructures, for example, we build a whole community around that where we just educate those people in the voice AI space, and we basically hand them out to other people that actually need those this kind of support. So this is, I would say, probably one of the easiest things. Yeah, go with VAPI, N8N, and Airtable.
This has been super helpful and a great communication. Is there anything else you'd like to let people know about before you tell them how to get a hold of you?
Biggest one is probably if you're interested in learning about voice AI or knowing why voice AI or what voice AI actually does, because that's usually not even clear. I highly suggest just looking into any kind of either your own company or into friends' company and see if they have phone interactions, and just ask them how happy they are with those phone interactions or if there's anything that can be optimized. Majority of times, there is plenty of need. And I think this is literally one of the initial things that you should do, because that helps you to see how much demand there's actually out there. Everyone, whenever they join a space, they think it's completely saturated because they get content all around this thing. It's kind of the same. You try thinking about a blue elephant, or not to think about a blue elephant, and you think about a blue elephant. It's kind of like the same principle. You just get bombarded with the stuff that you're already interested in or that you think about. So you think everything is saturated. And my biggest thing is just making yourself aware that you can leverage, or voice AI is at a level where it can bring a lot of value to businesses, and making it sure for yourself to understand so that you can tell them that they understand. Because this business opportunity is massive and you can make quite a lot of money for both yourself and that business, which is, in my opinion, one of the best things out there, especially given that voice AI is the quickest medium we have nowadays to communicate with technology. That's a fact. Speaking
the way that humans normally do, using their voice to communicate is one of the fastest things, and it's a growing marketplace. Love it. So with all that being said, could you please let people know how they could find you?
Yeah, sure. Easiest is probably on YouTube. Jannis Moore, JANNISMOORE. I push a lot of voice AI content there. Or if you are a school member or would like to learn more about voice AI itself, you should look into Voice AI Bootcamp on School. That's probably the best places to find me.
Awesome, Jannis. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you being on the show. Have a blessed and beautiful day, my friend, and I'll see you on the other side.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Wish you the same, man.
All right. Bye now.
Bye-bye.